You don't have to have a ruler, but it'll just make it easier. So here we go. We're going to end up with something like this, but in this case we're going to use the Hale method. This one here is the Richet method. See how it's got 7.5 heads? So that's the other one. Okay, you can do that one if you want, but I'm going to do this one this time. And this was my planning one for this, just to practice, you know, to warm up for it. And then, so look, sometimes doing something like this, because it's a new set of ideas, it's sometimes good to do a sketch, a quick one first, to help you practice and help you think about what it is. We've got a head, just looking at it, is that they're taking the sort of the width of the cranium, not so much the side of it. So that's interesting. Yeah, so they're really focusing on the width. Okay, so if I sort of measure the back of that from there, it's about there, right? The widest point. And if I take that same measurement from the front, you can see how it's coming to this part of the circle, right? It's not making the whole width or the depth of the head. So the cranium, according to this method, is this sort of, you know, it's part of it. It doesn't go all the way to the front. So I'm actually just studying this with you right now because I don't know this method myself. So we're studying this together. So because we know that a circle fits into a square, we can use that idea as a system to compare the size of a skull with the size of a body. So in this system, it appears basically that the head unit and from the back, if that's the cranium unit, then we've got the chin coming down again here. It appears to come down about half a head unit. It's a bit less than half, so maybe here. So if we look at that being the 2/3, you know, it's not exactly the same as the Loomis head proportion method. I mean, but this is the thing. These methods have slight variations. The task is to basically use this system to sketch the body. And the system is based on 11 craniums, or 11 little units, 11 squares. So what you'll start with is, you know, a sketch that is measured to take up 11.5 units. So I'm going to do it quickly with this one here as a guide, and then I'm going to do it a bit more accurately. And it crosses over at where does it cross over? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5, 6, and then yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it starts again there. So basically, you got to go down 6 units. I'm just going to do it quickly so I can sort of think it through. Alright, so you've got to go down 6 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to go up a half and down 6. So we're going to go up a half and then down 6 more. Which unit did I use? This rule has got a whole lot of different measurements on it. There we go. And then down 6 more. Okay, so it's the sort of crossover at the pelvis, you know, the bottom. So that'll be the height of our man or woman. I'm thinking of it as a man though, because there's normally slight differences for a woman, mainly in width of shoulders, pelvis. Yeah, width of shoulders and pelvis. So this is the cranium, right? It fits into one of those units. Okay. So there's the cranium. I'll just use this, I think. Then the top here, so that's the bottom of cranium and nose. So that's the bottom of nose. So this is where it's similar to the Loomis method. Okay. It's different, but it's similar. In other words, we've got a measurement line, bottom of the nose, that was used in the Loomis method. It's just in a slightly different position here, that's all. Anyway, so there we go. Now, the next line here is the shoulder, or the pit of the neck. The pit of the neck is the way they're referring to it here, because most, you could see it as lining up with the top of the shoulder bones, which is very similar to the pit of the neck, which is like the base of the neck, you could say. Okay, and then the third one is the bottom of the sternum. Now the sternum, you can feel, if you touch your chest in the middle, you'll feel a hard point. Okay, and that's your sternum. It runs sort of from the pit of your neck down. It's like a tie, it's about, mine's about that long. So my neck's about here, and that's my sternum. So my ribs all join up. It's basically this bit here, right? So the ribs kind of, how do they work? They come like that, I think. So they all kind of tie up to the sternum. Right, so the sternum's the bottom part of the main plate that all the ribs attach to. Okay, and you'll be able to feel it. And in our sketch, that's the next point. That's the bottom of the sternum. Sorry, the sternum is the whole muscle, the whole bone, and this is the bottom point here. Okay, so that's that. And then the 10th rib, which is not quite the bottom of the rib cage, but close to it. That's the next one. Okay, and then underneath that, the next one down is the ASIS. Okay. Now that's a point on, let's see if it's got it here. Yeah. If you feel your waist, and you can feel your sort of hip bones here, okay, on the side, right? That's your hip bones or the top of your pelvis. Then if you feel around the back where the you can feel a little bony point here, okay, and actually you can see it on most people. It's there's almost no fat there. You know, no matter how fat your body, a person's body is, this part normally the bone is always close to the skin, and you can feel it. It's called the ASIS. Okay, so you just feel around, sort of at the bottom of your back, below your hip bone, above your bottom, right? That's the ASIS. So that's that point there. It's a bony protrusion in your pelvis. Right, that's roughly the pelvis. Pelvic bone. And the ASIS is about here. Okay? So that's that point. Okay, so let's sketch that in. And the other thing we've got to work with is it doesn't show it on here. Here we go. So this is the sternum, and this is the edge of those two bones, which are called the collarbones. So the collarbone, this is the pit of the neck, collarbones, okay? And that's 2 units wide with a little gap in the middle. So basically, okay, the shoulder, which is here, is a little bit more than 2 units. So we would put 2 little units there, which is about that big, with a little gap in between. Okay, so our little shoulder points, right? The sternum would start here, come down to here, and the collarbone will sort of sit like that. All right, and then the jaw, again, 1.5, bit above 1.5 units is the bottom of the chin. Okay, and then the neck would be in here. So if we were to sort of put in our little man, he's going to be something like that. So there's his little head. Okay. All right, so back to our reference image here. Right, the rib cage comes down a little bit more than 2. So the bottom of the rib cage is going to be about here. I'll give myself a little center line. This is the bottom of the rib cage, about here, just below that measurement point. Remember, these are our measuring points. Let's just get rid of those. All right, so it's 5.5 down, and then 5.5 down, adding up to 11. I'm sorry, 5.5 down and then 6 down, adding up to 11.5. Okay. So from the front, we've got the sternum, we've got the 10th rib, and then we've got the ACES. So that means that the top of the pelvic bone is about here. It's almost halfway between. Yeah, according to this, it's about halfway. So let's just make it halfway. It's about there. All right, and the width of the pelvic bone is, see now, 1.5 down. Excuse me. Yes, it goes all the way down to here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the bottom here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so it's right here. And if we pop a little unit here, if I give myself a bit of a guide like that, it might just help me to see it. Okay, so there's the ACES. That's the top of the femur. Top of femur. That's the leg bone. You can also feel that in the side of your, where the top of your leg joins into your pelvic bone area. Okay. So the femur, the top of the femur starts here. And it goes down. So I'll place it about, I'll start it out about here, because on my sketch I can see that it's starting just inside where that collarbone joins, or very close to it. So I'll start it about there. See, it's the same width of the collarbone. Okay, and then we're going to go down from there. It's going to be sort of like this bone, like that. And we're going to go down about 3 to the knee bone. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. That's our knees. Okay, and it's sort of, it's almost straight. And then the bone, the top bone sits above that, and the bottom bone begins below that. Okay, and then the lower part of the leg has 2 bones, so you could maybe draw it, with a couple of different lines. And then the heels, or the foot, the top of the foot comes up about half a cranial unit. So this might do that, and then the foot sort of takes up something like that. Yeah, some people have big arches, some people have small arches. So just use a sort of a triangular shape. All right, so now we've got the femur, the knees, the feet in the correct height. Let's go in and sketch in the pelvic area now. So the pelvic area starts up here, and it's a little bit wider than 1 unit. So it's going to sit about here. And it goes all the way down to here. So that's, a simple way. It's like a heart shape with a V at the bottom, or a sort of a W shape. It's more complicated than that, obviously, but this will do. Just a bit of a guide. Okay, and so that's where the vertebra, the spine, connects to the pelvis. All right, and then the 10th rib is here, and the rib cage stops a little bit below that. Okay, and then roughly speaking, you want to go not as wide as the shoulders, not quite. So the edge of the rib cage probably comes to about there, and it's roughly speaking sits inside a sort of an ellipse shape, but it doesn't go all the way down. So let's put the ellipse in first, and then if you rub out the bottom, and then you just sort of pop that up there, that gives you a reasonably accurate shape for a rib cage. All right, and then our vertebra backbone comes through there. Now on a woman, the pelvis is wider than a man's, and on a man's the shoulders are a little bit wider than a woman. So you know, yeah, it doesn't matter that much for now. This is really enough. This is detailed enough. Okay. All right, so yeah, our little shoulders are out here somewhere. They kind of connect there. They're attached to the back with the shoulder blade, which is a big bone, and that's comes almost all the way down to this line. And then now the arms of the length of the elbow is 2 units, and then it's sort of 2.5. So roughly speaking, we started a little bit lower than that line and go down 2 units to about here. So our elbows will be here. So it's just below that 1, 2, 3, 4th line, and then we go 2 more units down. 1. Now it's getting confusing. 1, 2. So it's just below that one. Okay, and that's the halfway through the hand. So the wrist starts about here. Okay, and then the hand is about 1 unit, about there. Okay, so that's about right. All right, and so that right there is correct. It's rough, but it's correct. So now that I've sort of thought that through, I'm going to do a larger version, a neater version, okay? So I'm going to basically make this larger. And by doing it twice, I'm going to help to remember. It'll help me to remember it. So I'll just fold this here. So I've got that as a reference. I'll turn my paper this way, I think. And I'll maybe use that. Okay. All right. So this is perhaps the most important thing, is to just mark really clearly your 11.5 units. So I'm going to make this one larger. So I'll pick, I could probably even do that whole distance there. Yeah, so I'm going to do a larger unit this time. You can see on my ruler, 10, 11 and a half. It's going to take up most of this page. So I'll start with a line at the top, and I'm just going to mark each of these. Now forgive me, I'm going to stretch in front of the camera here. So I've got to come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get rid of those. And then I've got to do a half a unit. And from that point, that's like my transition, I go down 6 units. And that gives me my height. All right. So now I'm going to draw a series of very light squares just down to about here, and I'm going to use that width. So it's got to be a square, right? So I'm using the same measurement, which on this ruler is one of these points. Okay. So I'll just do it from, again, I've got to reach in front. Sorry about that. I'll do it from there. 3.5 in. So this way I'll have a little set of boxes. All right, you can probably just make it out in my sketch there. Okay, and then we've got the half. All right, and then we start again 6 down. So we start from there and we go 6 down. So that's 1. But here I'm going to sort of spread out so that the boxes go off down towards the leg side. So I'll just move it over here a little bit. This way I've got the boxes popping out to the side. So I'll give myself a little center line just for the ribs. Something like that, which comes down through to the pelvic area. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my little points just as I wrote here, just so I don't get confused, because it is confusing with so many different points. So I'm going to actually mark these on my sketch. Okay, so bottom of nose, pit of the neck, pit means the base or the bottom, bottom of sternum, the 10th ribs, then we've got the ASIS, which is halfway up. No, it's not. The ASIS is there. Then we've got the top of the femur, which is the top of the big leg bone. Then you've got the knees, or the center of the knees. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got to go down 3 for those, not 2. So the center of the knees are here. Okay, and then the feet or the heels are there. All right, how are we going for time? Let's stop there, and we'll have a 15-minute break. And after the break, I'll just keep going, and finish it off. And then I might even, I think I'll draw the skeleton strong, and then I might even sort of add a little bit of the shape of the body. But remember, it's more important to show the accurate structure. And I'd like you to leave all of these little notes on the drawing, and to leave your little guidelines so it's quite accurate. So this is not really a finished drawing. It's a drawing to show the concept. It's a drawing to show the measuring system, to show me that you can copy the measuring system, in your own way. Okay? So we've got unit number 1 up here for the cranium. I might start with a little circle there. All right. Then we've got about halfway down, or a little bit above halfway, maybe about here. That'll be our chin line. And this is our nose line. And if I again reach in front of the camera, sorry about that, I'll try to measure the distance from the chin to the nose. That will give me the brow line. And then the hairline. So that's my brow line about there. Nose, chin. You can just see that, okay? Yeah. Now, if we were to pop in the sides, I would say maybe something like that. And then if our jaw comes out to about here, then we could join it up like that. All right. I feel like my nose is probably too short. Oh no, it's about right. And then the eyes sit sort of in there. That line there. And then the brow. And out here is the other part of the cheekbones. And then I'm actually looking at my little friend here to help me with this detail. And about halfway down. You don't need to have this level of detail, but it's kind of fun. Alright, so that's, that's our little man. Or woman. Okay, and that's what the unit's based on. The circular part. Okay, so now this is the pit of our neck. Okay, so it's if you feel at the pit of your neck at the front, you'll feel two little bony protrusions about that far apart, maybe 5 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and that's really where that's the start of your collarbone. So the collarbone sort of sweeps out like that. Okay, and then the width of the shoulder, according to this system, the collarbone is exactly 1 unit, but there's a little bit of gap in the middle. So that gap I just described, say about there, then plus a unit either side. So a unit for us is this number here. Do that up there. Be a bit better for you, I think. So I'm going to measure 1 unit out here and 1 unit out there. So that's the start of my shoulder bones. All right. So bottom of the sternum. So this bone is actually shaped a little bit like a tie. Think of it as a little sort of a short man's tie. It's kind of roughly like that. A short man's tie, not a short man's tie. Okay, and then the rib cage comes down to just below the 10th rib. So the 10th rib is at the front, and I think it's the 12th rib that's a bit lower out the back. So you could say about here maybe. It's where the bottom of the rib cage will be. But as I showed you in my other sketch, we've got to create this kind of an ellipse. So we can find out the width. In the video from Proco, I'm pretty sure he mentions that there's a sort of a 2 unit box. Right? Now, 2 units is basically that times that, right? And the rib cage fits inside that. So it doesn't go all the way out to here, and it doesn't touch the edge of this box. So I'm going to make it, according to this, it's just inside 2. So we'll take 2 units, just a bit less than 2. Okay, there's my 1 unit. So 2 units, and I'll put the point just about at the sternum. So this is 2 units, okay? So my rib cage is going to be just inside that a little bit. All right. Now we can roughly now draw an ellipse, and the ellipse goes up, in fact, a little bit behind the pit of the neck, because a rib cage from the back, you can see it here, is sort of slanted upwards. See that angle? So the rib cage from the front, what you see is a little bit higher than the shoulder blade. So we can go up a little bit higher there, and we're going to come down to basically, where would it come down to? Just below, just above the top of the aces, so about here. So I'm going to draw an ellipse that sort of fills that space really lightly. I need to reposition my paper because I can't reach. And this is just to sort of position parts of it, okay? It's not the, we're not going to use the whole shape. Alright, so roughly speaking, my rib cage goes up into there and comes down a little bit thinner than that. I'll make it about here. And then it comes to here and a little bit below that. Make it about there. That might be a bit long. Yeah, it's a little bit long. Say about like that. That's reasonably good, I think. Yeah, we'll start there. So, you know, you don't have to draw every rib on your rib cage. That's not necessary, but just try to get that roughly elliptical shape. And I think, yeah, stop it around, that's the 10th rib. So stop it just a little bit below that line. I might have gone too low. All right, something like that. All right, and then what you can do, you can imagine that in the front, you've got ribs kind of doing, you know, this kind of thing. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. And the front starts there. Okay, now shoulders. What would we do? We can sketch in the shoulder blade, and the shoulder blade sits approximately on that line out the back and comes down to about there. So it's almost one, you know, it's a sort of a big triangular plate, isn't it? Actually kicks up like that. Kind of like wings, aren't they? But that's out the back, remember? So I'm just trying to find my distances. Yep, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, and then so the shoulder muscle, shoulder bone sort of hangs from about there. Okay, now we want to find, you know, whichever one you want to use, your rough sketch or the diagram. Let's draw in the pelvic bone. Okay, I think I'll use this to make sure I'm getting it right. So the ASIS is the bony protrusion out the back, and the top of the pelvic bone comes about halfway up. So let's say about there. It's a little bit below halfway actually, so let's make it about there. And you know, the vertebra, the spine comes down, and of course it's not very thin. It's got the vertebra stick out, you know, but roughly speaking they follow that, the center line from the front. Okay, and then the top of the femur is also the sort of the bottom of your tailbone, sometimes called the tailbone. You can see it here on the side. It's if you feel your bottom, it's where you know, the top of your cheeks are. You can feel the bone where the two parts of your bottom come together. Okay, that's that point. That's that point there. Top of the femur, yep, and then the ASIS is there. Okay, so then, and then halfway down below the top of the femur is the bottom of my pelvic bone, my pelvic bone structure. And if I put one box here, which I've got, I can see that we've got this kind of a shape. I'm going to put my ruler. Yeah, it's less than 2. Okay, so 2 units is here, and so that the width of that, the maximum point is less than 2. So I'll make it about there. So that's the outside edge of this bone. So it comes up and curves here, and then at the top of the femur bone it sort of swings down. Okay, then I'll just sort of sweep it through there maybe. This, you don't have to make this accurately, but it might help to do it a little bit accurately so you can sort of compare it to the sketch, to the photo. So it's going to be roughly like that. It's an interesting shape, isn't it? A set of shapes. I can't help think of the heart when I look at this, or at least the symbolic shape of the heart. Okay, sorry, that's a bit low there. Beautiful. Okay, now that's, you know, that's enough there. You could put a little bit of dimension there maybe for the vertebra, and just, if you notice the bones at the back, they get quite large, you know, because they need to be large to support our body, but you know, the vertebra at the back are getting sort of wider as they go down. Okay, Beaut. Now the femur, there's a sort of a socket joint which appears to sort of stick in kind of like that. And then the outside of the femur, again going off this drawing, is just a little bit wider than 2 units. So the outside of my femur bone is going to be about here. Okay, and then it's quite a large structure, you know, I mean it has to be, doesn't it, because it's, you know, we walk with these bones and muscles. So you might simplify it to a sort of a rectangular shape maybe. Something like that. And then the bone itself sort of starts off the bottom. Alright, so now we'll go roughly straight down. I'll spread the, I'll angle it out slightly. And we've got to go down 3 now. 1, 2, 3. So, but we're going from the top here, right? So 1, 2, 3. And then at that point we've got the large sort of bone. I can't remember what it's called. You draw it a bit like a, you know, like a bolt shape, if you've seen metal bolts, or a teardrop shape. And that bone's slightly curved and pretty thick, and it gets a little bit thicker at the bottom. Something like that. All right. I can clean up my line work later. The most important thing is the position here, okay? All right, and then yeah, from the knees, I was just checking you could see that. So the knees are next. I'll lift this up. Sorry, I wasn't showing all of that. Yep, so we've just done that. Okay, they get a bit wider at the bottom. They're slightly curved. They're not exactly straight. And I've made them go out a little bit, just a little bit. And then again, now we're going all the way down here, and the bones at the bottom, there's two bones on either leg. There's a bigger one and a smaller one. So just sort of now before you do that, draw a little line halfway, a half unit up. That's going to be the top of your foot. So in other words, the foot will sit on the ground, and it's kind of it's a combination of many small bones. Okay, it's going to go up to nearly that height. I don't really know the structure of the heel, but it's roughly sort of a wedge shape. So you could maybe do something like that. Okay, now I've just made his feet point out that way, but if he's standing straight and straight ahead, it would be foreshortened and point forward a little bit more, depending on which way you want his feet to be turned. Right, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toes, etc. Okay. Yeah, so I'll just detail that a little bit. So you got this little bone here. It's a little bit thinner than the other one. And then this bigger bone sort of comes in front down the bottom. And this is this spanner shape. This is your ankles. There's a kind of spanner shape. Sorry, once again, too high, too low. There's a sort of a spanner shape here. Don't add too many details, just keep it geometric, I think is probably the best way. Simplified. Alright, so something like that. So then we'll try to repeat that on this side. Something like that. All right. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Looks a bit wide, but it's probably okay. Let's see how it looks when I add the rest. And I think these are getting in the way. I might just draw these lines a bit lighter through there so that I'm not losing them. Okay, good. So let's keep going. Now, shoulder width, as I say, we've sort of marked it there. The top of the upper arm bone, you know, they all bones get a little bit wider where they attach because they normally have a socket, a ball and socket joint. So they always get a bit sort of wider at the top. So you could start with some kind of a tapering shape. And then we want to head down, or starting about there, just below the shoulder, you want to go down 2 units. So this is sort of going to here, and then to about here, so just below the 10th rib line. And this is roughly where our elbow is going to go. So our elbow is going to be here, elbows, and we'll just sort of angle it out slightly to sort of match the legs. Elbows are going to be here. And then from there we've got 2 more units, 1, 2, plus a little bit, and that'll bring us down to roughly halfway through the hand. And the hand is a bit more than 1 unit, so let's do this like that. No, sorry. We'll stop it at the top of the femur. That's roughly the top of the wrist. So the top of the femur is roughly the top of the wrist. And bring those bones in a kind of a... And then the hand is starting here and goes for a bit more than 1 unit. So 1 unit down. It's there, so it's going to go to about there. A little bit past that line. Okay, so now the hand. I don't really know the structure of the bones well in the hand, but I'll just start with roughly that. Okay, now I think I've gone down to sort of half. Yeah, it's about right. I think on their drawing they've gone a little bit lower. A little bit longer. That's okay. All right, so the wrist starts about here. Top of that's about there. So I'm just kind of using the photo as a reference, but just changing it a little bit really. All right, something like that. Okay, so basically from there I could add a little bit more detail and then I'm done. Now don't worry too much. Just get rid of that writing, I think. It's interesting thinking about all the bones in the hand. There's apparently quite a few. I don't know how many, but more than you might think. So something like that might do it. All right, and the bone at the top here, which is I think a sort of a ball and socket joint again. It's quite big at the top.
Sharky says, hey, Kamasabe, long time no see. He says, hey, sport, you connect the dots. You pick up the pieces. He says, you know, I can see two tiny pictures of myself, and there's one in each of your eyes. Never do everything I do. Every time I light a cigarette, they light up there. I take a drink, and I look again, and they're drinking too. It's driving me crazy. It's driving me nuts.
I think the top of my sternum was a bit high.
Sharky says, deep in the heart of darkness,
What I'm going to do, I'm just going to sort of do a few of these bones.
listen to my heart.
They sort of follow this elliptical pattern. And they're wrapping around, they're always wrapping around the back. And they're going up. That'll do. Sort of more out the side, isn't it? I mean, again, I think women's rib cages are a slightly different shape to men's. Apparently. Yeah, that's pretty good. So just, you know, just have a go.
Sun's coming out. Like a big bouquet. Walking into the grocery store. It's sharp as day. Sharp as day.
Maybe something like that.
There was this man. And there was this road. And if only I could remember these dreams. I know you're trying to tell me something. Strange dreams. And Sharky says, I think about speed. I think about it. It's not oh yeah. Strange dreams. Another girl singing. The man said, he's not at his desk right now. Can I take a message? And the little girl sings. They sing. Sharky says, all of nature talks to me. I can just figure out what it's trying to tell me.
Alright, and then in the background you could pop your little
Swinging in the breeze.
shoulder blade.
Insects are rubbing their legs together. They're all talking. They're talking to me. And short answers. They're fucking up their flashlights. Talking. Talking to me. Hey, look out. Bugs are crawling in my life. You know, I'd rather see this on TV. Sharky.
And I might just add a little bit of tone there just to top shot. What an amazing thing the human body is, eh? Now the front rib, it's only the 10th one that joins up, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's this one here. So that one out there is actually out the back. Alright, now let's just bring in a little... I'm not going to get these accurate, I'll just do a sort of a... something like that. Oh, we haven't really done our neck yet. Let's pop a little neck in. Alright. So that's really the task, but I'd like you to take a bit of time and just neaten the drawing up, finish it off a little bit, just so you're happy not only with the positions but also with the drawing itself. If you've got a couple of coloured pens, maybe that might be a nice way to finish it off. For example, you could maybe draw the guidelines in with a little red pen. Just so it's a bit clearer, you know. And we could just add a little box here as well, just so it's a bit clearer. So, box, box. So the red pen will just help separate your line work so it doesn't get too confusing.
And then there's a snake. And the snake had
You don't have to use it, it just might be nice.
yes, that's true. A snake flies. A man and they fell asleep. Let's see. Then the snake was walking by the garden and he was talking to himself. And he saw the woman and they started
I'll do boxes out this side.
then
Oh no, I'll do it on this side.
the woman liked the snake very much. Because he made little noises just then. Was like the picking snake. But there was little fibers in his mouth. And flames went dancing out of his mouth. And the woman got this. And after that, she was bored. Because no matter what happened, he was always happy as a What did the snake say? Yes, what was he saying? The snake told you things. He told you that the time was a big typhoon and all the sharks came in. He came out of nowhere and he walked right over the house with a big and the woman noticed she was out. And the wind was asleep. Yes, it was. And the woman because she was anyway, we got into the boat we were leaving. But they never stayed in because the lemon she was out. She was alone. And this is when the story repeated. It was something like myself. And when I do my job, I'm thinking about things that, because when I do my job, that is what I do.
It's kind of a five-sided. It's not quite a rectangle, it's sort of a, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're a little bit wider than they are, tall. So they're not quite a square. They're rectangular, but they're not rectangles. They're five-sided. And then the brow, there's a sort of a plate here. Goes up to the hairline. Okay, now the brow comes down, and the temple. And then here it goes out. And it comes down, and that's the cheekbone. Comes across and about halfway under the eye socket. Cheekbones go down. And that's where your teeth are attached to. There's a gap there. The lower teeth. Go away. The lower teeth are attached to the jaw, the jaw, and that bone is separate to the other one. Something like that. I made his teeth too wide, but that's okay. They're not his ears, by the way, that's his cheekbones. The cheekbones are sometimes the widest point. Sometimes the cranium's a bit wider. He looks a bit worried. Anyway, there he is. Looking good. So I think that's enough info here. So I'll just sort of, I don't really know what these bones look like, so I'm just going to make it up. Just try to make them look a little bit three-dimensional. So that goes up to the top, that red line. There's a socket, there's a sort of a ball and a socket joint. And so this is the top part of the bone, the leg bone, and there's a ball, and then there's all these tendons and things. So that's roughly what I'm doing there. I'm sure it's not correct, but it'll do. Amazing to think that we are born through this passageway into the world.
You forgot to take your shoe. And there's your book. And there's your pen.
Maybe if we pretend this never happened, they'll all just go away. And you
All right, so we're looking pretty good, I think. It's, according to Dr. Hale, this is an accurate, roughly accurate bone structure of a human adult from the West. All right. So it's, 11.5 cranial units tall. I mean, I could add more details to this side. I don't need to, but I could. What time is it? How much longer have we got? Oh, there's only a few minutes left. All right, so I'll just finish off a little bit more detail here in the last few minutes. And yeah, we'll wrap up. Amazing how the bones are twisted in the forearm a little bit. It must help us get all that movement we can get in our, in our hands. Must be partly contributed to by that, that part of the skeleton, I imagine. I'm just making this up, really. I'm not really. This is not accurate. Something like that, right? All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a good weekend. And I hope you're looking forward to Monday, where we start our life drawing practice properly with gesture drawing. So we're going to begin with gesture, and then the bean, and we'll sort of go on from there. All right. Stop there. Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're happy with your drawings.